There are many in the West, including many who should know better, who find it difficult, unpopular, or just plain embarrassing to defend capitalism. I take the opposite view. We should double down on it for a very simple reason. It remains not just the best, but the only chance for the least fortunate in the world to make life better for themselves and their children. And the more we see of capitalism's rival, socialism, the more proof we have that capitalism is the way we want to go. I've seen this over and over.
Like, name any socialist country. They have cut poverty faster than any capitalist country. Any. The countries that have guaranteed healthcare, guaranteed education, guaranteed housing for everyone, they are fundamentally and empirically better for the lowest classes of people than capitalism is. You want to know why? Go check out any factory from Apple, Amazon, GM, Tesla, wherever in the global south. That's what capitalism does to the lowest of us.
Over again, from my own childhood to my time as governor of South Carolina to most recently and most dramatically during my tenure as U.S. ambassador to the United Nations. I grew up in South Carolina as the daughter of Indian immigrants. My mom started a small shop selling clothes and gifts that grew into a successful business. She showed my brothers, my sister, and me what it meant to live the American dream. As my mother's story so vividly illustrates, America is a country where people can find jobs that match their talents and passions. Some Americans take this for granted. The rest of the world envies it.
No, they don't.
As governor of South Carolina, I marveled at capitalism's power to improve lives. Our pro-free market policies helped bring in more than $20 billion in investment and created jobs in every county of the state.
You guys, like, do you notice, like, when I talk about the differences of capitalism and socialism, especially like seed socialism, I mentioned like guaranteed healthcare, education, food, you know, housing, like that stuff, right? Things that you need to survive. What did they mention? What's Nikki Haley's first thing that she mentions as like the success, the proof of why capitalism is successful in terms of like a metric, an actual metric, not an anecdotal story about why she believes in capitalism because her mom believed in capitalism or some bullshit. It was $20 billion of investment, capital investment. What is that? That does nothing. You're not talking about poverty. You're not talking about improving literacy rates, improving, should I say, decreasing rates of heart disease. You're not talking about any of that shit. Investment. And I mean, the jobs, this shit came out in 2021. This came out a few days ago. Jobs have been universally down for the last year and a half.
Those jobs provide dignity and purpose. And as I often say, when you give a person a job, you take care of a family. During my time as the U.S. ambassador to the UN, I was reminded that not every country enjoys the same freedom and prosperity as America. More than 1.5 billion people still suffer under socialist regimes.
Awesome.
In 2018, I stood on the Simon Bolivar Bridge at the border of Venezuela and Colombia. I watched thousands of Venezuelans cross into Colombia for the only meal they might have that day. I held a beautiful baby girl.
The U.S. government is economically sanctioning and blockading Venezuela while asking Colombia to help them in regime change. That's how we got Juan Guaido. and that whole bullshit that failed. It failed so miserably. The U.S. attempted coup, Nikki Haley, that you were a part of, okay, that the UN and the entire international community says that your attempted puppet leader, Juan Guaido, was not the leader. And Nicolas Maduro is the rightful, elected, democratically elected president of Venezuela. And if we stopped blockading, sanctioning them, and allowed them to have free access to world trade, then their economic prosperity would increase. But here's the craziest part. Even under that, infant mortality has gone down, poverty has been cut, especially under Hugo Chavez. So, I mean, just ridiculous. It just.
Her mother told me all she wanted for her daughter was a future of freedom. They were one of millions of Venezuelan families whose lives have been destroyed
by you,
by the country's socialist policies.
No, by you.
So imagine
by
my
you.
dismay to find that socialism has become.
You destroyed their lives. Okay, the economic sanctions by your administration that you worked for led to like 40,000 people being killed by COVID in Iran. Okay, you are the reason we have the economic plight, if you want to say, in these countries that are under siege. Okay, perpetual siege. You've been attempting to remove these democratically elected officials in the global south for decades. Sometimes you succeed and sometimes you don't. And guess what, Nikki fucking Haley? You didn't succeed. Twice. In Bolivia, the people rose up again. In Venezuela, the people already knew that Juan Guaido was a fucking puppet of U.S. and OAS imperialist sort of maneuvers. Okay, that's why they rejected them so quickly within their own country. The suffering that's happening in Venezuela or any other country that the U.S. demonizes is directly because of the U.S. Directly because of the U.S. Treasury, World Bank, IMF complex. Okay, that's the reality. Add Wall Street in that mix too.
So imagine my dismay to find that socialism has become trendy here in America. American socialists claim they seek a more enlightened socialism, like those found in Scandinavian countries.
No, we don't.
But those countries are not socialist.
They aren't socialist, and we do not claim to want that type of socialism. We don't want the Nordic model, which is a neoliberal Frankenstein of the social democracy that exists in the mid-20th century in the Nordic model. No, we don't want that. Not at all. And that isn't socialism.
They're capitalist and offer large welfare benefits.
They are social democracies.
But ironically, to make their system work, they've had to repeatedly slash their corporate tax rates. Denmark has cut its corporate rate by more than half since the 1990s. Other democracies.
Since the massive increase of neoliberal globalization. Yes.
Including Israel, India, and the UK experimented with.
Israel is an apartheid state. India is under a Hindu nationalist regime that has been involved in genocide. And the UK, I mean, has a long fucking track record of genocide, slavery, imperialist wars of aggression, coup attempts. I mean, the list goes on and on and on. These are freedoms, though.
With socialism, only to abandon it, and only then did they thrive. The results are in. Socialism, however you want to define it, has failed everywhere it's been tried. Cuba,
a tiny socialist island that's been under economic embargoes, blockades, and coup attempts for 60 years. 61 years. And guess what? They have better healthcare than we do. They have better literacy rates. They live longer. The Cuban people are healthier and smarter than us because of guaranteed healthcare and education. That's why. That's not a failure in my eyes at all.
A handful of elites sitting in a government office can never
like imagine you're the fucking global empire, right? You're the reincarnation of Rome, right? That the Republicans always like talking about. And you still can't beat this fucking little tiny socialist country, this little tiny fucking island off 60 miles from your border. You can't do that? Really? Meanwhile, tens of millions are starving. Tens of millions are being forced to be evicted. Tens of millions don't have health care. No, but that's success, right?
where it's been tried. A handful of elites sitting in a government office can never outthink millions of business owners and consumers making millions.
The Marxist-Leninist system, okay, it's not a handful of elites in government. It's not. The very I was gonna say complex democratic system, but it's not really that complex if you just look it up. It mirrors a lot of how we function with federalized systems, to be quite honest. So, like, but no, I mean the Jeff Bezos and Bill Gates. Let's let them decide policy. Those aren't elites, though. Those are business owners, and business owners is like you and me, right?
Of individual choices every moment of every day. You'd think we'd have gotten the message by now. An entire generation of American adults are too young to remember the suffering socialism caused during the last century. Instead of teaching students to reject our country's history and founding ideals, schools should have a required class on the history and collapse of the Soviet Union.
Overthrow of the Soviet Union.
Young people at least have the excuse of being miseducated. But what does one say about corporate CEOs who give in to social trends rather than standing up for a system that their own businesses and workers depend on?
Name a person.
I'm talking about advocates of so-called stakeholder capitalism, a philosophy that retains the word capitalism but abandons its meaning. Recently, the chief executives of some of America's largest companies
Are they really doing the no? What's happening in our capitalist country isn't really capitalism. It's actually socialism. Jeff Bezos is just like Fidel Castro, everyone. Are they really about to do that? Like, how do I even begin to explain to someone that is that indoctrinated, okay, that they think someone like Jeff Bezos or Bill Gates represents a socialist leader, elected leader? Like, God damn, it's the fucking memes, man. Like, they just literally do the memes in real life, and it's just too much. It's too much sometimes.
America's largest companies changed their self-definition. They said companies should focus on customers, workers, and communities. This is just politically correct nonsense.
Yes,
These
it is.
CEOs know that's what successful businesses already do. It's what they have to do to survive in our capitalist system. A company that cheats its customers, mistreats its workers, and abuses its community won't be around long. Profits are what keep a business going.
Literally any multinational corporation. I mean, name one, and you can look up. Like, if you're listening right now and you're like one of those capitalist fucking bootlickers, like, name a multinational corporation. Okay, like in your head, like name it, and then Google that company's name and labor violations. Like, this is not fucking rocket science here.
And allow it to thrive. They generate the funds needed for more job creation. You don't need an advanced economics degree to understand this. So, why are these CEOs so anxious to embrace this in name only capitalism? Probably because they think they need to placate the noisemakers on the socialist.
What the hell is stakeholder capitalism? And like, she has yet to define that. You know, they never define their terms. Have you noticed that? The right never defines their terms.
Left.
Almost over.
But that's a fool's game. The left is never satisfied. So let's defend what works. And what works is capitalism. Until the unforeseeable shutdown of the economy as a response to the coronavirus, it was working better than ever. Unemployment was at a 50-year low. Wages were rising at the fastest rate in a decade. More women and minorities were working than ever before. Poverty was at a record low in America. Let's get back to that as quickly as possible. There's only one way to do it.
What do we see though in the pandemic? Billionaires got, I mean, cumulative was like $3.9 trillion richer, while the working class went $3.7 trillion poorer. We got $3.7 trillion stolen from us by the ruling class. That happened during the pandemic. I mean, the December job loss was a net loss for only women. I mean, we just did the economic update with Richard Wolff, right? Like, the entire summer, the Latino community lost more jobs than anyone else. Like, what are you talking about? Like, nothing this person says is grounded in anything factual.
Capitalism. I'm Nikki Haley for Prager University.
Capitalism.
Thank you for watching this video. To keep PragerU video.
No, don't help them up.